chapter 230. An adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a notice sent to the Asbury Park Press and the Two River Times, posted in the main lobby of the municipal building as well as the municipal website. May the roll call, please.
Mayor Portman, absent. Greg Fitzgerald, absent. Thomas Welsh, absent. Christina Bonatakis.
Here.
Dan Mancuso.
Here.
Louis Demento.
Here.
Barbara Boas.
Here.
Megan Massey, absent. Wilson Bibi. Itzel Hernandez.
Here.
Frederick Stone.
Here.
Brian Cardigan.
Here. Thank you. We'll hold our administrative matters until later. We have two applications tonight for public hearing. One is 54 North Bridge Avenue, Block 2, Lot 18, which is continued from several previous meetings. Mr. Maynardi, welcome back.
Mr. Chairman, good evening. Kevin Kennedy on behalf of acting planning board attorney. May I just do a couple of preliminary procedural things? Okay, so first up, good evening and welcome to everyone. And I guess what we should do is swear in our two board witnesses. So first would be Shauna Ebanks, professional planner, our director of community development, and also Jacqueline Durman, engineer, our board engineer. Ladies, if you could just please raise your right hands. Do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide, to the extent you provide any, will be the truth, to the best of your knowledge, to help you God?
I do.
All right, let the record reflect that both individuals have been sworn. And Shauna, I have a certification here that I'm going to actually mark in as B1. And this is a certification. Sorry, hold on. B1 is a certification that board member Wilson Bibi reviewed the transcripts or listened to the tape of the May 8th, 2028 meeting. So I thank you for that. That's not always the easiest thing to do, and it's not always the most fun thing to do, but it is a very important thing to do, particularly on these continued hearings. So that will be B1. Shauna, do we have anyone else here that needs to certify or that about prior meetings that were missed?
No, I think,
I missed the May. You missed it, yeah.
Okay, but everyone else is
everyone
eligible
else
to,
is present.
okay. So Mr. Demento, if there's a vote tonight, you can't vote, but you're certainly entitled to make questions, ask comments, or make questions, ask questions, make comments and statements and all that great stuff. And I also have a document, Mr. Chairman, that's in our board package. It is, we're going to mark it as A30. It's correspondence from Mr. Minardi to Shauna Ebanks. It's dated 6/20/24, and it attaches an amended certificate of amendment or certificate of amendment for the change of the name of the company. It's dated May 22nd, 2024. And Mr. Minardi, it looks like your applicant's name has been changed from Two River Greens LLC to Floro, Floro, space RB LLC. That's correct?
That's correct.
So we'll mark that as A30. And just for the record, I know this is very basic, but all the prior representations that were made under the name of Two River Greens LLC and all the testimony from the witnesses, nothing has changed. You obviously understand that.
That's correct.
Okay. And so there's no change of principles or different people who have 10% interest that we have to disclose, anything like that. Great. And then I'm going to mark in here, and Mr. Minardi and Mr. Convery, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Shauna Ebanks prepared a memorandum basically dated July 7th, 2024. And it's regarding ordinance 490-119, Red Bank's conditional use findings, intent, and guiding standards and principles regarding conditional uses. And Shauna, we're going to mark that as B2, B for board. And Shauna, would you be able to give those to those? I'm sorry, right, reaching in front of you. That's a memo that just came out yesterday to the board members, so you can review that at your leisure. And I believe, Mr. Minardi, when we were here last, you had essentially rested your case. Is my understanding correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, So, Mr. Convery, you're here on behalf of your client, the objector. Welcome, and Mr. Chairman, with your consent, I guess we turn it over to Mr. Convery.
Yes, welcome back.
Bring the microphone closer to you, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the board. As we explained last time we were here, I'm here on behalf of Sylvia Constantino, who's a property owner adjacent to the subject site. She's here in objection to the application, and she's going to go through some of the things in her testimony this evening, outlining her stated objections. I also have two witnesses that are going to appear tonight. One is Lee Klein, who's the principal of Klein Engineering, a traffic consultant out of West Orange, New Jersey. And I also have Michael J. Pessolano, who is a professional planner with MJP Land Use Planning out of Bogota, New Jersey. So there'll be three witnesses testifying tonight on our behalf for this direct opposition. So I'd like to pull Sylvia Constantino as my first witness this evening.
Okay, good evening, Ms. Constantino. And I know we previously sworn you in conjunction with members' comments that you were making as members of the public, but out of an abundance of caution, since you're going to be a primary witness, we'll just swear you in again. If you could just state your name and business address, please.
My name is Sylvia Constantino. My business is located at 58 Rector Place, and I am the owner of the property under Costa Investments of New Jersey LLC.
Okay, and if you could just raise your right hand, do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide will be the truth to the best of your knowledge, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Chairman, before we get, I'll object to further testimony from this witness. She's already had the opportunity to testify in full. I don't see that she gets two bites at the apple.
I'm fine with it. She's got an attorney now to represent the objection, and, you know, I know it's, there's a lot we have tonight, and we will attempt to be I would encourage you both to be as quick as possible with testimony.
I might say in respect to Mr. Minardi's comments, you know, in the testimony that she's provided, it was at the board's request. This is our direct case. We have a right to call her as a witness, prepare for her testimony. Anything that she's testified to up to this point were questions, maybe some clarifications that were sought by the board or the members, but she's here tonight to testify as a witness on her own behalf.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Constantino, let me ask you, you are the owner of the adjacent property.
Yes, I am.
Okay, and how long have you owned that property?
I own that property since September of 2015.
And-
I've owned that property since September of 2015.
And was your law practice before you bought this property?
I was renting in the Homedale Commons at 100 Commons Way.
And what was your reason for coming to Red Bank?
I wanted to establish my law firm in an environment where I thought my employees would be comfortable and my clients would feel that they had privacy and not have to enter a building, a lobby, offering them some privacy. I felt strongly about the community character of Red Bank and owning a piece of history. My building is over 120 years old, and it's together with many other historic residential properties on the block. Rector Place, as you know, is overwhelmingly residential. I was intrigued and charmed about it being a fully restored Victorian. It still had some work to do. We did extensive work to the property, thoroughly restoring it, but managing to keep a lot of the original charm and character, so that the property has been lovingly preserved, and it operates as my principal place of business. I have 6 employees, about to have 7, not including myself. And we call it our second home.
Is there any other tenants at the location other than your law firm?
There is not.
Okay, and let me ask you, I mean, the use of the building, is it strictly as a law office? Is there any other use that you have within that building?
There is no other use. It is used as a family law practice. I practice exclusively family law. I'm a certified matrimonial attorney by the Supreme Court of the State of New Jersey. All the attorneys who work for me and the paralegals, we only practice family law.
When you purchased this building, were you aware of the fact that it was in a particular zone, that it's in for commercial and residential?
I absolutely was.
And did you specifically look for a property in that type of zone?
Yes, I looked for a property in that type of zone, again, going for the more homey feel, to make my clients and my, employees comfortable. I didn't want to be in a retail area with shops and stores, and I didn't want to be in a building anymore that had a lobby and other businesses, like multiple doors, shared bathroom. Yeah, so I absolutely was looking for this property, and it was the first property that I looked at, and I instantly knew that I wanted to purchase it. And actually, the process to purchase it was extremely difficult because the previous owner, having spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on the restoration, did not want to sell to just anybody. In fact, I had to basically promise the previous owner that I would take care of it, that I would not like lease out parts of it. It wasn't contractual, but it was more an emotional thing for him. He had to vet me through other people that he knew, and I was approved to purchase the building.
When you purchased the property, did you have the property surveyed?
I absolutely did.
One mark for identification. I believe this is our first exhibit, so maybe mark it as 01.
I think we had 01s.
Did we just?
Yeah. I think this is. Maybe I made it.
I don't think we marked.
Okay.
Name.
Will be 1. And Mike, it's a survey prepared by.
Mark this and just share that with members. I have an extra copy here. Okay.
Oh, Charles, no.
Charles O'Malley, and the date of it is
7/31/15.
31/50.
Oh, one.
And Mr. Menard, did you get a copy of this?
Yeah.
I do have extras. I didn't realize I had as many, so I can give you a few more of the large.
Do it. We can share. Extra one. You don't? Oh, thank you.
You know, this survey that we just marked. Yeah, copies. So this survey that we just marked is over.
Wait, just speaking to the mic.
This was the survey that you had performed when you purchased the property.
You know, and I'm sorry, let's just for the record, in case there's anyone else objecting, we'll call it O Constantino 1. Got it.
Yes, this is the survey that I had prepared at the time of purchase.
Okay, and it's dated July of 2015. Was that the time that you purchased the property?
That's the time that I was under contract.
Okay, and I would call your attention to the southeasterly lot line.
Mhm.
And if you could just explain, is that your building in the middle of the survey?
It is. Actually, my property is 2 lots. The parking lot is basically 1 lot. And then the dwelling, the 2.5-story zone is on the lot closest to the adjoining masonry building, which is currently the laundromat.
Okay, so is the laundromat the subject property that we're dealing with this application?
Correct.
And I want to call your attention, and I know you're not a surveyor, but there's a distance between your building and your lot line, and it says 7.1. Is that the approximate distance from your building to the lot line?
Yes, in feet.
Okay. And do you have any idea how far off the lot line your building is? Or how far your lot line is from the existing laundry?
It's 5 inches, I believe, on his side, or maybe up to like 12 inches.
I'm sorry, 5 to 12 inches is what?
12 inches on the laundromat side.
I'm sorry, that's the distance between the laundromat building and the property line?
Correct.
Got it.
I want to also mark for identification a photograph that's dated 4/17/24 at 9:36 a.m. This photograph was taken by the witness, Ms. Constantino, and she's going to create a foundation for it and qualify the picture, along with a lot of other ones. So if I could mark this now as O2.
O Constantino 2. Got it. Mike, are you gonna give
If you
copy to
just
Mr.?
give everything to
I
Sean.
want to see, make sure Mr. Minardi gets a copy of it.
What was the date?
April 17, 2024.
Right in the file.
Ms. Constantino, that picture that we just marked as O2, you took that photograph on April 17th,
I did.
and you took all these other photographs at relatively the same time, correct?
Yeah, it could have been a few days later on the 21st, but I had them wrong marked.
Here you are. You can take it.
And this photograph, if I could just show it this way so that the board members can see. Is this the building?
That's the one.
Mike, just, but both of you, the mics are not as sensitive as they should be, so I just want you to speak into the mic, so.
You might have to carry it with you.
So Ms. Constantino, this picture depicts the building right in back of your lot, correct?
That is correct on the side. That's the back of the laundromat.
And this is existing as it is today?
Correct.
And you don't have a fence that separates the two?
No,
Is there any reason why?
no, because there would be a fence then right up against his property.
So you have to put a fence on your lot. You couldn't put it between the two because there's no room.
Correct.
Okay.
But I do have one in the front, as you can see in the picture, and one on the side. So it's a thoroughly enclosed yard and it's wide.
And with this distance that exists, have you had any interaction with the current neighbor that's there?
Yes, we've had, I would say, a lot of issues with the laundromat as it exists right now. Both with the toxic fumes that are spewed out of the smokestacks and that the smokestacks themselves are basically on my property because they jut out the back of the building. Plus, he has several holes and he also has a vent, and I have pictures of all of that. Those are openings on the back of the building. Essentially, his smokestacks and the fumes being emitted from his dryers are clogging my air conditioning units, actually seized up one of them, and I had to replace one of them. I had it looked at again today. It's gonna have to be cleaned, both of them. Because there's just too much lint coming out of his smokestacks, plus the odor is very bad. So starting over 2 years ago, I started complaining to the township. And as of now, the Monmouth County Department of Health has been out and has required Kent, the current owner, to put in a filtration system, and we can go through other pictures. But as of now, there is no filtration system and there's a lot of lint hanging off the building. And I know that a rough plan might have been submitted now to the township, but there was no permit for the structure that he tried to put in place. And there was the threat of a fine if he did not comply. So that's in the works right now.
May I ask a question? Thank you. When did this venting problem start to occur? Is it new, or has it been since you've been in the?
So what
Office.
we believe is that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
we know from a worker that knocked on my door to ask if he could access, the back of the building, a worker for the laundromat. He said that, in or about, a few years ago, he increased the number of dryers in the laundromat tremendously. He said he amped up his operations big time, and that would be around the time that my employees and we started like suffering certain issues. Our faces would be burning outside when we got out of our cars. We would smell it in the interior of the building. I had a secretary, she went out on long-term disability. She had to have lung surgery. So there were a lot of issues, and we lodged complaints with Red Bank. They kept sending people out to inspect. I don't know if there were ever any permits for the increase in dryers. I know that there was an electrical permit that was applied for, but I don't believe that the dryers were ever inspected or ever approved, that there was an actual plan to beef up the operation. Because when I first took occupancy of the building, the issues and the smell and the noxious odor were not as prevalent. And I started to notice that. And then my air conditioner went kaput. I don't have copies of the pictures today, but it's absolutely horrible. It's actually 2 inches of growth of particle dust that went into my air conditioner. And I spent over $8,000 on a unit, and the next one's ready to go. So we've had some issues where I would also call the laundromat owner because he had standing water on his roof. He has a flat roof. So anytime it would rain, we would have like a lake up there. He complained once saying that a tree limbs like were on his roof and he wanted them taken down. I would also complain because his garbage spills over his dumpsters, into the front of my property.
Thank you. I think you answered my question.
Mr. Chairman, I would like the witness to explain the pictures. There will be an offer for the proximity of the building in the location. If I could have these marked in one shot or have her testify to what they are and mark them separately, I just would like to know how you wish to proceed.
Why don't you put them all under O2?
So we'll mark it O2,
This is
A, B, C, D.
I'll keep a record of them as we go, okay?
Actually, so we already have O Constantino 2 is just this picture.
Right.
So O Constantino 3 is a series of photographs taken by,
6, 7, 8, 9 photographs taken by Sylvia Constantino, and she can tell you with the dates and times on each one. I just want her to explain what these pictures are, and I have smaller versions, which I'll circulate right after.
so we're gonna mark them A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I. And so, I'm sorry, all right, so Ms. Constantino, you're going to advise as to when those pictures were taken, and just for each one, just hopefully you will confirm that they're accurate depictions of what exists on the site today. And if they're not, say so.
The one that was just shown is an accurate depiction of exactly what it looks like.
Let me ask you, with respect to the pictures that you're about to testify to, are they pictures that were taken on the dates in the top right-hand corner?
Yes.
And is there any change in the circumstances that any material change to any of the pictures, if you took them today, would they generally be the same?
Yes.
Okay. So why don't we explain to the board what each picture represents?
Yeah, Mike, just use the mic, just in case there's an appeal. I wanted the judge to hear everything.
This next picture is taken from the second story of the building where.
So let's just,
That's A,
for
right?
clar, we're gonna mark that O Constantino 3A. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure for the record what you're identifying.
I took this picture on April 21st, 2024 at 2:07 PM. And it depicts from the second story, looking out the side window, looking at the exterior of the laundromat. It shows you exactly from an aerial perspective how close that building is to me. It shows you my fence now that is in the front. And that's mainly also to prevent people from trespassing on my land to go back there and continue to do things to the building.
This next picture would be 04.
No, we're saying O,
Yeah.
O Constantino 3B.
3B
Yes.
is April 17th, 2024 at 6:12 PM.
Okay,
This is the side on Bridge Avenue of the laundromat showing a door that's there, and that is one of the current air conditioning units, above the door, another door.
This is taken from on the front of my client's building?
No, on the Bridge Avenue side.
Japanese side, thank you.
This application use itself.
The next picture.
O Constantino 3C.
Again, the same area that we were just looking at on the side of Bridge Avenue. Another air conditioning unit, this time propped up by cinder blocks behind chicken wire. And this abuts right up almost against Marion Security, which is on Bridge Avenue. And it also shows that the laundromat basically is right up against Marion Security.
That date.
They-
Thank you.
4/17/24, and that was also taken by me.
Ms. Costantino, the applicant has agreed to remove these air conditioners and clean up the outward appearance of the building on all sides, just so that you know?
He's done nothing to the building.
Well, obviously that would, I understand that, but the condition, it's a condition if there's an approval that they'll do that. They have already agreed to do that.
This goes to the character of the applicant, that he's not a good applicant. I don't believe he's in good standing. He's spewing noxious fumes into the air and does not, obviously not concerned, and was threatened by the Board of Health and still hasn't done what he's supposed to do, and I'm gonna show the next picture. This picture.
Cosentino 3D.
This was also taken by me on 4/21/24 at 2:04 p.m. And it shows that as a result of the Monmouth County Board of Health coming out and threatening to fine him $2,000, I think a day, he extended the pipes on top of the building. As you can see, they now come from the back of the building and up over the roof. He says he did this work without a permit and without submitting a plan to the township.
I'm sorry, there's a question as to whether the current owner is the applicant. Maybe you can,
He is still.
and that might be a question for.
What you can see from the application, 10% owner, 90% owner is a woman by the name of Sheila, who they reside at the same address. But it's always been that he, to my knowledge, was the only owner of the laundromat, so they reduced him to 10% and they made Sheila 90%. So these pipes now extend across the top of the building. My husband calls the township basically every 3 days to find out what the status is. And as you can see, all of that mess on top of the building, standing water, and also lint accumulating, just like it's accumulating in my air conditioning, and just like the residents and myself are breathing this air.
And Mike, just before we get it away from me, do you have a picture of 3C? I just don't want to lose it.
This one.
I believe so, yeah.
Should mark it before we get try.
Thank you.
Let's give it to 3 people.
Has the photos from the.
Thank you.
Read
So just explain what they are.
This is 4/17/24, taken at 9:35 a.m. And it shows that the.
And I'm sorry, we're marking that as 3E.
Yes. It shows that the stacks actually, as they protrude out the back, infringe on my property.
Have you had a survey done to confirm that? Keeping in mind that if they receive approval, these are all going away. The
I
stacks
have a
are,
survey confirming that, no.
okay,
This next one was taken on 4/17/24.
That's Cosentino 3F.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, what was the date?
We're 1724.
Thank you.
I believe the applicant testified that there were no openings on the back of the building, and I testified about the vent holes at the bottom. There's also a levered vent square on the back of the property, which is an opening in the back of the property. And it also shows you Marion Security, which is mere inches from the.
And excuse me, Mike, I don't think we got 3E.
Or Miss C and F. Yeah. This is F, right? Yeah.
3. Mark, Kevin,
That's
you
3E?
want the small picture for this?
Yes, I just don't think we have it.
that one, okay. It's this one. This next.
Yeah, the picture.
Thank you.
Constantino, are those holes on the bottom on, what does it say?
This is E.
On E, does air come out of those in a forceful manner, as you would assume it would the vents at the top? Have you witnessed that?
I have not witnessed that, but I'm not gonna stick my face in there either.
Okay.
The next one is, I believe, G.
Yes,
This again, taken from the top story of the building, looking out over to the top of the building, showing all of the accumulation of lint. And also showing the very close proximity of Lighthouse Ice Cream. And showing a multitude of cars stacking up at the light. That was taken on 4/21/24 at 2:07 PM. This is, coming up to,
H.
this is 4/17/24 at 9:34 AM, a closer look at the property where those holes are and that debris falls off this building into my yard.
Hi.
I.
Is a close-up shot of some sort of apparatus hanging off the roof with exposed wires, and that the facade of the building is actually crumbling. And again, the collection of lint that I breathe every day.
And the date of that?
We're 21/24. That was I, correct?
Correct. And Mike, that should be all the pictures, correct?
Just one more.
There's one other, I didn't have, no, that was extra, that was not part of my first count.
Okay,
Okay, so you can testify to that and we'll just mark that, that wasn't part of the 9 count.
This is 4/23/24 at 11:50 AM. It is directly in front of my building on Rector Place, showing this green Sequoia Toyota truck parked in front of my building, and as a result, all of the traffic has to go around that over the double yellow to form two lines at the light.
and excuse me, just for the record, Mike, we're marking this as O Costantino 4, correct?
That's correct.
And just to note that this is at 11:50 AM, which is after rush hour, showing how the cars stack up, especially if somebody parks in front of my building and there's parking all up and down the street.
Ms. Constantino.
If I may, I don't want to hold things up, but I don't think I have all the photos. We look great. It's not really, we'll put these exhibits together, properly mark them.
Yes.
How many do you have?
I see one, should be 10.
So this was the last one, I think. Let's have this picture, anybody?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay, so I didn't get much of this thing already. Gave up someone for talking.
there you go.
Thank you, son. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, this is 04. Wait.
So, Ms. Constantino, I mean, all these pictures depict the proximity, with the exception of the pictures on the traffic. So, it's your testimony that this building, as it exists, has created some concerns for you in its current state, correct?
Correct.
And the proximity that you testified to is within inches from your property.
Correct.
Is there any way that you could remove that problem? Can you make the building any further away, or could you move your property any further away?
No, the original 125-year-old structure, those are the original bones, and they're gonna stay.
So regardless of what use comes into this building, whether it says the laundromat or whether it's any other use that this board would approve, you would have to deal with this proximity issue no matter who's there.
Correct. However, it's posed a problem with my employees, and I have a great concern that just carbon filters that might mitigate the odor of marijuana is not going to eliminate the odor of marijuana when my building is literally 7 feet away. And there's noxious fumes coming out of it now, and I have every reason to believe that there will be no mitigation of that, and there will be no one for us to complain to, and that my employees are gonna start walking out the door.
Let's talk a little bit about the fact that there is a safety plan that was proposed incident to this application. Did you review the safety plan?
I did.
And as far as the safety plan is concerned, did the safety plan say that they would be able to secure the perimeter of this building?
It said that they could, but they cannot.
And why can't they?
They don't have access to the back of the building, as you can see from the pictures. My property is locked to prevent trespassing, which has gone on in the past. And they can neither maintain, they cannot work on, they cannot get back there. And it creates an attractive nuisance for increased crime. And basically what I believe will absolutely happen is that back of the building will be identified as the weak link. And then anyone casing the property would understand all they need to do is jump the fence and I am hidden from view. Their security guard can't get me, the security guard and the police can't chase me. I'm back there and they're hidden from the public view where they can basically go about their business and make designs on possibly robbing the place or, gaining entry. So all of that is my concern, including the surveillance issue.
There was also some testimony by the applicant concerning lighting the backyard in an effort to make it more secure. How would you feel about lighting the backyard right now?
I believe that and the cameras are an invasion of my privacy. My clients deserve confidentiality. A lot of them don't want to be identified even walking into a building. I would say that sometimes they'll even park elsewhere just to make sure that, let's say, a work truck is not identified in my parking lot. So it presents a real concern to me. And with daylight savings time, we do leave in the dark. And I don't even like saying this publicly, but when we leave and it's dark, we are afraid, and we will be more afraid if it's a cannabis retail shop.
Do you have an alarm that gains entry into your building
Do I have an
for
alarm?
clients?
I have an alarm system. My door is locked
Right, so but can anybody walk into your building? And
No.
And why is that?
because my staff is under strict instructions to ask who it is on the camera and to identify whether they have an appointment. And they are not let in unless they identify themselves and we know who they are. And if they're a delivery person, we ask what they're delivering and when. We also have panic buttons. I don't know if the panel is familiar, but divorce attorneys have been attacked and killed more times than I care to know about.
All the current security measures in your building are the result of the type of law that you practice.
That's correct, including that I'm monitored by Central Station.
If there was some testimony about using infrared cameras instead of light, how do you feel that would work with respect to your property?
It makes me very uncomfortable because the type of monitoring that needs to be done needs to be constantly running and being monitored off-site, which means that they can move their cameras, they could basically do whatever they want, and I won't know about it. I have no way of checking to see whether they are indeed surveilling me, looking through the windows. And infrared makes it all the more worrisome because now you're not lighting up the property because of the nuisance. And now it's even more of an attractive spot for a potential criminal to gain entry or to be hidden from view of the security guard or even the police looking for them.
Can I ask you, with respect to the issues concerning the proximity of other locations, can you explain for the board what is existing in the surrounding area of your law practice? Who's to the left of you, who's to the right of you?
So we know that the laundromat, if you're facing my building, is to the left. To the right is a longtime residential homeowner, may even be here tonight, has lived here many, many decades and is very concerned about this cannabis retail shop.
Objection here, sir.
Yeah, I would agree with that. If that person's here and has concerns, he or she can testify, but that's not your job to do.
Behind me is Marion Security, which is a family-owned business. Then, next to the neighbor, on my right, down the one, there's been a multitude of new homes that have been built. There's one on the same side of the street as me, and now a second one has just been renovated. And across the street, there's a brand new waterfront building, all residential properties from my property all the way down Rector Place until you get to the intersection where the local smoke restaurant is.
Constantino, you obtained this map. Can you explain where you got it from, and I'll mark it after you qualify what it is?
I got this off the internet. I believe it to be the Red Bank cannabis location restriction map with the buffer zones and the permitted zones for cannabis.
Kennedy, I don't see a date on it. Maybe it's Eubanks.
There isn't.
No, it's not dated.
What is it?
So
It's
I only have a couple
Costantino
copies of
5?
this, which we could pass around. Yeah, it's O Costantino 5.
Okay.
So, Ms. Constantino, you can see the area where it's all located. I didn't give you the last one.
I can, and I forgot to say that on the other side of the horn, that is the Solo's Lighthouse Ice Cream, which is on the point. Okay, yes, I would essentially be, as you can see in the upper left-hand corner where their BR1 zone is, there is a light blue shaded area of houses. Those are the properties right across the street from my property and the laundromat, and those are residential homes that are occupied by families with children. And then, the laundromat would be right on the point, and I'm next to him.
So it's the case that this zone map carved out those residential properties on the water that go up to the light up there. And they're all across the street from your location.
Correct.
So it would be the fact that Strollo's is within the permitted area, you're within the permitted area, but everybody across the street, that's the residential homes across the street are outside the permitted area.
Until you get further down the block, and then on both sides, it's the different permitted zone.
They're all occupied by residential homes.
Correct. I've spoken to families. Yep.
And this BR1 zone, even your building itself would be a residential use if you chose to convert it that way.
That's correct.
There was some discussion concerning the odor mitigation, and you know, if you could just testify right now, are you concerned that odors emanating from this the applicant's proposed use would harm you in some way?
I absolutely do think that, not only from any fumes that could be emitted from the building, but people potentially leaving the building, walking down the street and consuming the product that they just purchased. The applicant testified that if that were to occur, that they'd give me a phone number that I could call, or the police could be called, or their security guard would leave their post in the interior of the building and ask somebody to leave. But if you think about that in realistic terms, that's not going to happen. And I can tell you, as much as the building has been beautified and restored, odors come right in. So that is a concern of mine, and I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do if this is allowed. Right now, there are no other like outside generators and other mechanical equipment. So if there is going to be a rooftop HVAC unit added to the top, I have a concern also about noise.
Are you aware of the other applications that have been approved for cannabis retailers in the vicinity?
Only the one on Bridge Avenue.
But are you aware of how many there are within your surroundings?
Oh, absolutely. Well, there's one that's slated to, that was approved. That was the China Moon, and that is just literally not even a block away. If you're looking at it from an aerial perspective, that's in the Wawa Shopping Center. Then you have Monteverde, which is the next block over. You have the abandoned Exxon station, which has also been approved, and that was the Garden, I believe. And then you have a couple of blocks away where Red Bank Liquors was or used to be. That's going to be another one, if there's more than 3 licenses given out.
So can I ask you, you've observed patrons of the Strollo's Lighthouse before?
Absolutely.
And who typically are the people that are by that?
Objection to relevance.
It's absolutely relevant because it was.
Just, hold on, Mr. Chairman, may I? I would respectfully allow the question to be answered within reason, but your objection is noted for the record.
There are times when I work on a Friday or a Saturday evening, and typically you will see patrons of Stroll's ice cream, mostly little kids, with their parents taking them for an ice cream, milling about the outside of Strollo's, spilling over sometimes on the sidewalk right in front of the laundromat. They'll walk in front of my building, it's fine, it's just kids having ice cream. Sometimes people wrongfully park in my lot, to go to Strollo's because there's just no parking on the street available. But even at night, you'll see kids walking around with their parents. Sometimes there's teenagers and like 12, 13-year-olds walking around late hours of the night, especially in the summer season.
Do you ever see children in the neighborhood around your office?
Absolutely. They sometimes they're escorted by their parents down the sidewalk. Right or wrong, they cut through the laundromat parking lot to go to the bus stop that is on Bridge Avenue in front of Monteverde, and I have a picture of that. One of the homeowners sent it to me, and that's their child's bus stop in front of Monteverde. And the children are, either walk to school or their parents take them.
Do you have you witnessed any traffic problems getting in or out of your office?
It's a nightmare. And what I mean by that, especially during drive time, if the train pulls in, forget about it. When the train pulls in, people start making a U-turn over the double yellow. Don't care, they're not waiting. They'll pull in someone's driveway and turn around. So you've got to be ultra careful when you come in over the bridge on West Front and make that left on Rector Place. Even when the train is not in, the cars stack up. I do have videos. I'm not going to board bore you with them. Essentially, though, I counted 15 cars when I made a left on Rector Place one morning. At night, when my employees and I leave, if we leaving at 5, we're stacked 3 in my parking lot waiting to get out, hoping that somebody will let us make the left turn or even a right turn. People typically don't want to let you in or out. So you're waiting for somebody to be kind enough and wave you on to make the left out of my driveway, but you can't see oncoming traffic from 35. So even though they're waving me on, I have to inch out, and then go and pray that I don't get hit. I do know that there's a resident of Rector Place that has recently been hit by the car. I often won't go out at lunch to go walking because I'm taking my life into my hands.
Do you have the same difficulty making a right out of your parking lot?
Absolutely, and if someone's parked in front of my building, and that's where the mailman also parks, it's utterly impossible to make a right turn out because there's nowhere to make a right turn unless I go around the vehicle that's parked in front of my building. And even so, there's always at least 3 to 4 cars stacked up by the light, making the right turn out impossible. And I will say too about the children that walk up and down the sidewalk, they routinely walk across the driveways of the laundromat.
Can I ask you, there was some testimony concerning the valuation of your property in relation to the application. Did you have an opportunity to review what the applicants said regarding the loss or increase in property value?
Excuse me, I'm going to object. So what happened was that this.
Closer to you.
I'm sorry, what happened was that this witness, in cross-examining my client, asked the question, was she aware of any studies that had been done in this regard? The answer was yes. The board responded by requesting copies of those studies. We did not offer them to evidence. The board requested them, so we produced them. Now he's going to attack the studies that his own client elicited. I don't see where this is going.
All right, so I'll concede the point.
The microphone?
Use the microphone, please.
If Mr. Minardi is concerned about the nature of the testimony, then I think if the board asks for them, the question is, did he produce any evidence that spoke to the issue of whether by this use being approved, there would be a reduction in property value. Because I know it's a condition that exists. So if the cross-examination that elicited the production of the articles was something that he produced at the request of the board, then I think the board should ask Mr. Minari what evidence he put forth to substantiate or to opine on whether there would be a reduction in property values if this use was approved.
They testified that they were aware of studies that the uses did not negatively impact property values, and we said, great, please submit them, and they did.
I understand that, Mr. Mancuso, but if Mr. Minardi wants to stipulate that on his direct case, he put forth no evidence to prove that there would not be a reduction in property values in the adjoining areas, then he could stipulate to that, and I can refrain from this testimony.
I don't even understand what he said.
I'm not sure I do either.
Did your case include any evidence that there would not be a reduction in property?
We're not seeking any variance.
And I think, Mr. Convery, if that is your position, when you have your planner and your closing arguments, I think that's a point you're going to make, but I would respectfully agree with the objection that. Okay,
withdraw
thank you.
my question. Nothing.
Thank you.
You know, just to Mr. Mancuso, can we ask Mr. Minardi if he has any cross-examination for Ms. Costantino?
Yes. Thank you. Ms. Constantino, I'm looking at 05, which is a cannabis location restriction map. You said you found it on the internet somewhere, and you believe that it was an accurate map? Now, it shows the properties across the street from yours as blue, is that right?
Well, like gray blue.
Okay, well, when I look at the key at the bottom, doesn't it show that that color coincides with the industrial district? Here, I'll show it to you.
Can you confirm that to the best of your knowledge is an accurate
yeah.
map?
So this map, if you see, it's because of the shading and the printing color. The industrial zones is highlighted in I, so it's this darker blue area. It's because of how it's printed. So industrial zone is down here. That zone right there, you see that's not shaded, right across the street from the area. That is that's a different zone. That's stuck right there in the middle. This zone right here.
I don't even see that residential has a color on this.
No, it doesn't, because it was only to highlight, the purpose of this map was only to highlight the zones that cannabis is permitted in. Cannabis retail is permitted in.
Okay.
That's the whole purpose of it. It
Right.
wasn't for anything else. It's permitted, cannabis businesses are permitted in the light industrial zone and the industrial zone and the BR1, the WD, the CCD2 and 1, and that's about it.
Okay.
That's why the other areas or the other property lines are not included or shaded. And they have that grayish color. It's just the
I see.
printing color
Thank you.
that's thrown off.
Okay, Ms. Constantino, you would agree that cannabis, retail cannabis is permitted in the zone where my client property.
According to the map.
You think the map is wrong?
I'm not saying that the map was wrong, but I think that every property needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. unless, the board would be rubber stamping applications for cannabis shops. I think there are a lot of factors involved in land use.
That wasn't the question. All right, let me ask you this. You're concerned about, toxic fumes being emitted by the dryers at the present laundromat? You're aware of this application is approved, the dryers will be removed?
Whether they're removed or not, the testimony
Are
of
you
the,
aware that they're going to be removed?
well, you can say that they're gonna be removed, but this applicant hasn't done anything that he said he's gonna do for years.
You know what, respectfully, and I know that's a very firm belief you have, but that came out in your direct testimony. So if you could just answer his question, if you can. So your
He said
question
he's
again,
going to remove them. Again, it doesn't do anything to eliminate my fear that there will be noxious odors from his next business.
Complained about the appearance of the, present heating, ventilating, and air conditioning systems at the property? Are you aware that the applicant has also agreed to remove all of those?
He's agreed to remove it, but I succinctly remember the board asking if a plan could be submitted or more details. I haven't seen it, and I have a concern that if it's a retail HVAC system on the rooftop, that now that's going to send off noise that's going to disrupt my business. So I have no assurances except your applicants say so, that he's going to do things.
In addition to those assurances, everything that we've talked about, if there would be an approval, would be a condition of that approval for them to be able to get a CO to operate when the time comes. So it's all part of that, and there are noise ordinances for air conditioning and things of that sort.
And screening requirements, are you aware of that?
I appreciate that, but with all due respect, Chairman, nobody is doing anything about the noxious fumes that have been polluting my air around my building and neighborhood for years. So compliance, follow-up, inspections, I'm terribly disappointed with that. And I'm not assured of anything at this point in time. So it could be a conditional of the granting, but there's not gonna be any follow-up.
I had nothing.
What the cost of recline, please?
yeah.
One moment, Mr. Klein. Does anyone from the public have any questions or comments regarding Ms. Constantino's testimony or any questions regarding what's happened so far?
Okay, great.
We have one lady in the back. Come on up, ma'am.
Mike, could you extend the microphone to her? Hello, if you could just state your name and address, please.
It's online, 50 Electric Place, right next door to Sylvia.
And I did not previously swear you in, did I?
No.
All right, do you swear to tell the truth no matter what? Do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide will be the truth to the best of your knowledge to help you God? Thank you.
First of all, I support Sylvia in every way. And I have many concerns. I'm concerned about the traffic. As it is now, it's very hard for me to get out of my driveway. My cars are always parked in front of my street, and now it's gonna be even worse. I typically take walks on Rector Place, and now it's gonna make me very, very nervous that I may be running into somebody who may be by. So I don't know, I have to stay close to home because my family's worried about me, so I always walk on Rector Place. So that really concerns me a lot. And Sylvia has worked very hard on this, extremely, and I support everything that she has said.
Thank you.
That's fine. There's one more. I do want to remind the public that this is an opportunity for questions regarding the testimony so far. Please hold your comments until the end.
Chris Fabricant, 35 Rector Place, a brief comment, so.
And you were previously sworn, correct?
Yes, I will.
You're still under oath.
So Ms. Constantine, mentioned that there were small children on the block, and she spoke about, immediate neighbor, who we just heard from. If you go one house beyond the immediate neighbor, it's a, duplex residence with two families. Each of the families has small children. If you go one more house beyond that, it's another household with small children. And last week, the children from those three residences were setting up in the front yard of the duplex a lemonade stand catering to passersby.
Nothing further, I'll call Mr. July10.
Okay. Good evening. If you could just state your first and last name and business address.
Lee, middle initial D as in Daniel, Klein, Klein, principal of Klein Traffic Consulting, 156 Walker Road, West Orange, New Jersey.
And do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the best of your knowledge, to help you God?
I do.
And just for the record, you're testifying tonight in your capacity as a licensed.
Traffic engineer, well, professional engineer, and a nationally certified professional traffic operations engineer.
Thank you. And licenses and certifications are up to date?
Yes.
All right, and I'm sure Mr. Convery will have solicit some more information. Thank you. The witness is sworn.
Mr. Klein, you're the principal of Klein Traffic
Microphone.
Consulting.
That's correct.
And
Microphone, please.
That's correct.
And Mr. Klein, have you appeared before Land Use Boards before?
Yes, I have.
And is that part of your practice?
Yes.
And do you have you appeared before the Red Diamond Planning or something?
Yes, I have.
I believe you appeared last time we were here.
I was the
On another
following,
line.
correct.
Mr. Chair, to accept this qualification.
We'll accept them.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could just for the record, Mr. Minardi, do you have any concerns about the qualifications of the witness?
No, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Klein, did you have an opportunity to visit the subject site of this application?
Yes, I did.
And did you have an opportunity to visit Ms. Constantino's property?
Yes, I have.
And she retained you for purposes of reviewing traffic related issues regarding this application?
That's correct.
And when did you visit the property? How long ago?
I visited the property on May 8th, the afternoon before the previous hearing.
And did you perform any specific counts on your own?
When I was there, I did observations of a number of vehicles coming in and out of the laundromat. I observed the queues of traffic along Rector Place and Bridge Avenue. In general, just trying to get a feel for the activities in that area. I did take some counts of and note of number of vehicles that were coming in and out of the laundromat. The parking lot was never full. I noted that on several occasions, people would enter from the Rector side, cut through and come out Bridge Avenue, sometimes making a right, basically a U-turn, and sometimes making a left and continuing on Bridge.
So other than those general observances, did you have the opportunity to review the applicant's traffic expert's testimony?
Yes, I did.
And were you here both nights or just one night of testimony?
One night for the
last,
yeah, in May, that's right.
Okay, and did you have an opportunity to review the traffic report submissions incident to this application?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and when you did that review and you visited the site, did you come to any determinations regarding this particular use at that site?
Yes, what I looked at first was the parking. While the application meets the minimum parking requirement for retail in this particular zone from the ordinance 490-980, I did some research in the Institute of Transportation Engineers parking generation. It's now in the 6th edition. And in that, there is a compilation of actual parking demand of various cannabis dispensaries, marijuana dispensaries throughout Colorado and New Jersey in the 2010s and 2020s. And in that, it gives us average peak parking demand. It gives us 85th percentile, which is 85% of the time it's that number or less, and then a range of parking demands. So I looked at that based on a 2,270 square foot dispensary that's proposed here. The average parking demand would be 12. Ballpark or average. 85th percentile would be 26 parking cars. And that's to say that that takes into account the peaks of, let's say, a Friday afternoon, Saturday afternoons when the cannabis dispensaries are busiest. And the applicant in their testimony, I believe, mentioned that up to 21 people could be accommodated within the site. So the 26 parked cars, 21 people on site, it's getting close to jiving those two numbers together for me. So I looked at the parking layout, the way they propose it on their site plan. And they've oriented it so that vehicles will enter by Bridge Avenue. On the left, when they come in against the building, the parking spaces are virtually 7 of them or 6 to 7 of them are angled parking spaces. On the right side, they're parallel parking spaces. I look at this from a standpoint of safety. Even though Bridge Avenue is not Route 35, it's not under DOT jurisdiction. DOT has a rule where you cannot have parking within 50 feet of a curb line opening. So if you were to look at the curb line opening of Bridge Avenue, again, it's not Route 35, I'm just using DOT's criteria. There are about 3, maybe 4 parking spaces, one of the parallels, maybe even the second parallel one, the perpendicular parking space, and 2 in the angled parking spaces. They're within that 50-foot area. The reason they look at that is if somebody's trying to back out of one of those spots that's within 50 feet and a vehicle's trying to come into the site, there's going to be a point where vehicle that's trying to come in is going to have to wait for that person to back out of the parking spot, or they'll have to pull back in so they can pass them. So to me, that's not a safety issue, to have that parking so close, and I consider deficient parking, even though, again, they meet the minimum for the ordinance for the local requirement. The ITE numbers have much greater numbers, and it's not like a shopping center at Christmas time. This is pretty much every Friday afternoon and every Saturday. Let me just preface that with, I did some observations in Eatontown on Route 35. It's called AYR, A-Y-R, Eatontown. It's about an 8,800 square foot building. It's a large one. It used to be Garden Dispensary, and they took over the whole building and changed the name. When I was there, I observed that site had full circulation around the building, 74 parking spaces. They never filled up the parking lot. People were coming in and out pretty steadily. I was there between 4 and 6 p.m. on a Friday, and I think 2 and 4 on a Saturday, recently, when it was June. And I observed that operation. So I've observed how cannabis dispensaries can operate, in and out people. They're quick. People place orders online. They go in, they get their order, they come out. So it's a lot of turnover of those parking spaces. So I'm concerned with the safety of vehicles turning over those parking spaces so close to the entrance drive. The parallel parking spaces are 22 feet long. That's close. Typically, we like to see 20 foot long spaces, but at the ends of those parallel parking spaces, they have physical curbs. Right now, there's not. So you can pull right in to the last parking space without having to parallel parking anywhere. The middle guy, if there's a car at either end, that person would have to do it. But right now, the way they're proposing it, if anybody is parked in any of the parallels, you're gonna have to do that maneuver to get into any of the others. And again, that takes time, could impact the ability of vehicles to get into the site. Then I looked at their traffic analysis. They did their traffic report is dated April 26, 2024. And in that, there's a table, F as in Frank, number 2, 95th percentile Q matrices of the Rector Place approach to the signalized intersection of Route 30. I looked at that because my observations were that vehicles on Rector Place approaching the signal queued up. The times I was there from 5:15 to 6 p.m. in May, the vehicles were backed up past the subject property. So the exit driveway onto Rector is blocked more than 50% of this. When the queue clears out, vehicles are continuing to come, and it's difficult to make certainly a left turn out of it. I also looked at the county's comments about the movements of traffic on Rector Place, which is County Route 13. And they made comments that they want to restrict that to a right turn only exit. And I've got some concerns with that as well. All the vehicles then exiting, and again, it could be vehicles that came, parked, shopped, and left, or people that entered, couldn't find a parking spot, have to leave around the block, literally, and come back in and try again. And that's sending more traffic to the intersection of Bridge, Rector, and 35, which, by the way, in the borough's master plan was identified as the third highest crash frequency intersection. Table 9 from the 2023 master plan, Red Bank intersections with the highest crash incidents, 2018 through 2020.
Mr. Klein, when you observed that queuing, how much time was the average queue for a car? Or did you notice the queuing on Rector? How long did that queue hold?
20 to 30 seconds, sometimes a little longer, depending on where they showed up at the cycle.
Okay.
And how the traffic at West Front.
And what does either your opinion or ITE consider a reasonable queue time?
Well, I think it's not level of service, that's level of
Yep.
service. It's the queuing and that it blocks the driveway, the ability for vehicles to get out.
Okay.
And that vehicle not being able to get out takes up space on the site. The site's not extremely large, so it's not like they can circulate around. If it was a parking lot that had double loaded parking and parking around the perimeter, if they couldn't get out, the person that's coming in could circulate a different direction. There's only really one way in to a parking spot from the left to the right side, and then one way out. So it's a tight site. So again, that intersection of Northbridge and Rector, Riverside Avenue was third highest crashes from 2018. So in that table of the 95th percentile queues, in the morning peak hour, the 95th percentile queue was no less than 187 feet long, and it's about 170 feet from the signal from the South Bar and Rector past the site drive. In the PM peak hour, 271 feet, again, about 100 feet longer past the driveway, and 288 feet on a Saturday, again, beyond property driveway. And then in order for a vehicle to make a left out, as you heard from Ms. Constantine, that you need to get a courtesy gap from the people that are coming, northbound on Rector Place, where they start to form two lanes. You've got to get both of them to stop for you. And then you've got to be able to see through that queue of vehicles coming southbound on Rector. She said you inch out until you can see, or you hope that that when the person created that courtesy gap for you, they were looking ahead for you. I also looked at the trip generation comparison that they did in the traffic report. They talked about other uses. They talked about convenience stores that are permitted here. They also mentioned fast food restaurants without drive-through windows and coffee shops without drive-through windows. It's been a long time since I've seen a brand new coffee shop or fast food restaurant come on without a drive-through. A lot of the old Dunkin' Donuts that didn't have drive-throughs are asking to have drive-throughs added. They're punching holes in the sides of the building and wrapping traffic around. I know there's one in Eatontown like that. So I don't think it's really genuine to say that the site could be occupied by a fast food restaurant without a drive-through or a coffee shop without a drive. So that comparison, I think, is not a genuine comparison. Also, when I look at.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, sure. Just turn on your mic.
With respect to your, your previous analysis there about the convenience store, what's your observation about a convenience store, setting aside the fast food?
The convenience store, they're saying that, when you look at the ITE, the same size, 2,224 square foot convenience store would generate 139 trips in the morning. In the PM peak hour on a weekday, 109 trips during peak hour and 176 peak hour trips on a Saturday midday. And I'm going to get to this point now, is that in the ITE under the cannabis trip generation, there's trip generation between 1 hour between 7 and 9 in the morning, the AM rush hour, and 1 hour between 4 and 6 PM, the PM rush hour. Then there's also the peak of the generator. So if the store opens at 10, the peak hour might be 10 to 11. And if it closes at 10 PM, it might be 6 to 7 in the evening. So it may miss the peak of the traffic on Rector and Bridge Avenue, but it's still generating a significant amount of traffic. And there's a range. There's average number of trips, the peak of the generator, there's a low and an upper range. And the upper range, believe it or not, from ITE, the 2,224 square foot marijuana dispensary could generate as much as 142 trips compared to the 139 trips of a convenience store during the AM peak hour. Afternoon, it could generate as many as 286 trips, 140 in, 146 out on weekday PM peak hour. And that compares to only 109 for convenience store. So by comparing these uses with the dispensary, they're not telling you the full picture. This dispensary, if it is successful, could generate a lot more traffic than a convenience store. A significant amount, and significant being greater than 100 peak hour trips.
I have a question. I have a question too. My mic won't stay on. If you said that you observed the traffic in Eatontown. We have an existing cannabis store open in Red Bank. What were your observations of the traffic at that particular place, or did you not do that?
I did not do an observation there. The reason I did the one in Eatontown is I was doing a project in Eaton. So I did the one there.
It would help me more if you had done one in Red Bank. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Also, in their trip generation, they also did a discount as pass-by trips. So what they're saying in their trip generation is that based on pharmacy, they said that it could be 50 or 40% of the traffic would already be on the road on their way to or from work or to or from another errand.
And that wasn't testimony at all. He didn't take credit for that.
Just speaking, I say that again into the mic, please.
Testimony from our witness was that he did not take credit for that. That was his testimony.
Okay, yeah, it was just in the table. Okay.
Excuse me, I have another question, follow-up. In the applicant's traffic testimony, they noted that the ITE comparables were based on 2,000 square foot stores, right? And this is like 1,000 square foot. So
No, 2,200 square feet. You compare apples to apples. You say
Okay.
2,200 square.
okay, I stand corrected.
Yeah, use the same square.
All right, thank you.
That's the variable. The only other thing, so I guess, and I think I made this point already, but I just want to reiterate. My concern with the site is that based on the size of it, based on the number of parking spaces, the orientation of the circulation, all parking spaces, several, I don't know if they're still compact, but the last plan I saw was several compact spaces. The site is tight. In order for traffic to get in, to find a parking spot, if they drive past a parking spot, they have to drive out and come back in, circulate on the public street. There's no internal circulation for that. I feel that that's an unsafe condition to be able to do that in such a way. If the site was bigger and there was the ability to circulate within the site or look for another parking space, I feel a little more comfortable.
Mr. Klein, do you recall any testimony concerning the number of cars that the applicant would have their employees parking at the site?
I believe they talked about 4 or 5 employees. And at the height, yeah.
So that would be a reduction of the 26 spaces proposed?
Yes, because the number of parking spaces would include employees, visitors.
No further questions.
My note here that I wrote down was 4 max cars at any one time for employees. 4.
So 4 out of the 11, so there's only 7 left for customers.
Mr. Minardi, do you have any comments or questions?
You'll agree that the number of parking.
Can you just say more?
I'm getting it. Slowly, but I am figuring out this might. You will agree that the parking proposed for the site exceeds the minimum prescribed by the ordinance?
Yes, I do.
And you talked about 170, possibility of 170 trips being generated. What was the 85th percentile number?
We're talking about parking or
Trip generation.
trip generation, that was just the range. The range was for the peak of the generator, the average was could be 37 trips in the morning, 55 in the afternoon, and 64 on a Saturday. The applicant used numbers of Jason Street, which are slightly lower.
Thank you. I don't have anything else. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Klein regarding his testimony? from the public? Okay, keep going.
Good evening. If you could just state your name and spell your last name, please, and your business address.
Michael J. Pesolano, that's spelled P-E-S-S-O-L-A-N-O.
I'm sorry, P-A-S-S-O.
P-E-S-S-O-L-A-N-O.
Okay, and business address?
140 Elmwood Avenue, Wilton, New Jersey.
Do you, if you could just raise your right hand, do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the best of your knowledge, to help you God?
I do.
And you're testifying tonight in your capacity as a licensed, certified,
Licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey, which is in good standing as we speak.
thank you.
You're the principal of MJP Homes Planning and Zoning in New Jersey.
Yes,
And you are a licensed planner in New Jersey and had an opportunity to review the subject site at the subject location.
yes, I'm also a member in good standing of the American Institute of Certified Planners, AICP for short. And I did do a number of things to prepare for my remarks tonight.
So, Mr. Castellano, can I ask, have you appeared before a zoning and land use boards in the state of New Jersey before?
Hundreds of times.
And have you appeared before the Red Bank planning board or zoning board before?
And just for the record, Mr. Minardi, do you have any questions or concerns about the credentials?
No. We're happy to accept you as an expert in the field of planning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, Mr. Castellano, you visited the site. Did you also visit Ms. Constantino's site?
I did.
Did you retain your services to prepare a testimony this evening from a planning perspective, correct?
That's correct.
You had the opportunity to review all of the applicant's submissions related to this application.
I have.
And did you review the zoning ordinances as well for the borough?
And the master plan as well.
Okay, would you please tell the board your findings?
Sure. And by the way, I also looked at the video of the meeting before the May 8th meeting. I was physically present for the May 8th meeting on this application. My voice falls off at all, please.
Don't worry, we'll let you know.
Not an issue.
I should speak up. So, an interesting application, but its basic constitution is that it deals with the proposed application for a conditionally permitted use, which is a retail cannabis facility in the R1 zone. That is listed, that type of use is listed specifically as a permitted conditional use. In order for this board to have jurisdiction for that type of use, all of the criteria for conditional use for a retail cannabis facility must be met. And there is a section 122 of the ordinance that deals with those specific conditions. Bear with me just a second. (490-122). These are the conditional use criteria for cannabis retailers. A, cannabis retailers shall not sell alcohol or tobacco within the facility. B, cannabis retailers may not be located within any other businesses. I'll skip the rest. Item C, cannabis products and paraphernalia should not be visible from outside building in which the cannabis retailer is located. A, no cannabis retailer open to customers for business before 8 a.m. or remain open to customers for business after 10 p.m. Item E, cannabis retailers must provide a detailed security plan and receive approval of such plan from the Red Bank Police Department. Finally, item F, the sixth of the six criteria, otherwise compliant signage shall be permitted as specified for the zone in which the cannabis retailer is proposed or operating. I want to go back to item E, because I think this is still an outstanding question. This concerns a detailed security plan. I believe I heard last time that that plan was presented to the Red Bank Police Department. As you guys said, yes. But I'm not aware that approval of the police department has been issued. Have I missed something? Has that occurred yet?
I don't know if it has happened yet or not. Ms. Eubanks can speak to that, but if it hasn't or won't, it will certainly be a condition of any approval, as it has in the past.
So I can answer that. Usually the application is sent out to the police department. If they have a comment, they will send it if there's any concerns. It's always been the trend that that's what they do. If there's any concerns, they send back a comment. If there's no concerns, then there would be no response. So usually that means it is accepted. This report was sent with to the previous, to the police chief, and now it was also reviewed by the police captain, who's acting chief. And I actually did speak to him about that again, and he said that if there was no comment from the previous chief, then it stands.
So is that a de facto approval of the
Yes,
proposed security plan
yes,
in your eyes?
yes.
I still have to thinking in my prologue because this is a jurisdictional question as to what board has jurisdiction. If they never had police department approval, then theoretically this application is in front of the wrong board and has been up until this point. I don't know what Mr. Kennedy wants to do with that information, but that's how I'm seeing it, looking at the genesis of this application over several hearings now. And looking at the very specific language that says, and receive approval of such plan from the Red Bank Police Department. That's a precondition for even this board to have jurisdiction, in my professional opinion.
Why don't you continue and then we'll hear from Mr. Minority and then we'll get back to that on it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Also, sort of in that realm, I reviewed the hearing notice for this application and noticed that it does not mention the need for a variance of the minimum unoccupied open space, as well as several design waivers that I think is a flaw in the notice, and I'll defer to Mr. Kennedy to opine on the substance of that situation.
And we will also hear on that momentarily from Mr. Minority, and then I'll give my legal recommendations.
Thank you. So, in addition to the overall application, I'm sorry, let me back up. Neither the minor site plan application nor the conditional use application identified or specifically requested the variance relief sought for the deficient minimum unoccupied open space area on the site, as required by section 490-62 A Okay. In regard to, this being a conditional use, I had a chance to quickly peruse, Ms. Ebates' recent memo bringing out the, points, eligible in the ordinance, under section 490-119, dealing with how, conditional uses are to be evaluated by board. One of those particular items, subsection D, requires conformance to the standards of the zone district. The site improvements, existing and proposed, are not in conformance with the borough's development regulations. And as noted by the applicant's engineer witness during his testimony. Item A, front yard setback required is 25 feet. Existing and proposed is 19.78 feet. Directly placed 17.43 feet to North Bridge Avenue. This site has 2 front yards, 2 side yards, and no rear yard. No demonstration did I hear that this deficiency was ever lawfully established. Because of that absence of any documentation that it was lawfully established, a C variance for that deficiency is required at this stage. There's only one way for pre-existing non-conforming condition to be lawfully established, and that is that it was allowed and implemented before the zoning change to disallowed. I heard no testimony as to any progression of time relative to applicable ordinances or what have you. Absolutely no testimony supporting the notion that this condition somewhere along the line had been blessed by the community and should be viewed as a pre-existing non-conforming condition. And this will be a common theme to the other deficiencies that I will mention briefly now. Side yard setback required 10 feet, existing and proposed 0.99 feet from side yard of the bridge, 0.54 side from director. There's no demonstration that this condition was lawfully established. The variance required. I mentioned the minimum unoccupied open space applicant acknowledges now that he is seeking that variance of 4.28%. The requirement is 15%. Again, there was no demonstration that this lesser amount of coverage was lawfully established. So, of course, the C variance is necessarily required. There are design waiver items that are also mentioned. Those 3 have to do with zoning issues that generate C variance requirements, in my opinion. As to design standards, parking between the building and the front lot line exists and proposed. There again was no demonstration this condition was ever lawfully established.
Say it again, sir.
That there was parking between the building and front lot line that is said to exist and be proposed. I mentioned that there was no demonstration that this arrangement was ever lawfully established. A design waiver is required for that item. There is also a design waiver relief for parking lots under 490-98.J2. Parking lots to have a continuous 5-foot planting strip alongside property lines. None exists or is proposed. Instead, it is used for parallel parking spaces in this design configuration. Design waiver required from that of 490-98.B. Angle parking spaces require a rectangular area of 9 feet by 18 feet. Less is proposed in the new arrangement by virtue of several spaces that are over 16 feet. Again, generating the need for the design change. There is another section of the Borough Code that deals specifically with specific requirements for cannabis business establishments. And this is under section 490-56.2.f. And that is, cannabis businesses shall have equipment to mitigate odor. Now, this is one of the rare land uses in zoning code that calls out odor mitigation. And I believe that that's in the code because it's a concern with this particular land use. There were no specifics given in testimony that I heard by a credible witness, other than to say that the inventory is repackaged and the place is clean. Or to define what can be done. I don't think the practices document committed by the applicant. I believe that odor mitigation needs to be approved. Why else would the governing body go to the trouble of calling out the need to mitigate odor and provide for the planning board to review and make sure that that's done, if there's no demonstration as to how this is going to be accomplished? You heard in Ms. Constantino's testimony that their building is right on the property line with our property. That's the genuine physical constraint, and they have great bearing on the outcome of odor mitigation. We don't know because there has been no specific plan to provide for what type of equipment, where it will be installed, how it will operate, where the air will be ejected from the building, where the air will be brought in. All of those issues would be nailed down in a true odor mitigation plan that is part of the site plan itself. There was no such demonstration. According to 490-56.2G, cannabis businesses must have enclosed HVAC equipment. To my knowledge, the plan does not show any such enclosures. Is that still true, Mr. Minard?
We've agreed to remove the existing HVAC equipment, install a new unit on the roof, and screen it as required by the ordinance.
Thank you.
Is that loud enough?
Probably not.
We've agreed to remove the existing HVAC, but all those unsightly units that showed in Ms. Constantino's photos, replace them with a rooftop unit that will accord with applicable noise requirements and be screened as required by local ordinance.
Okay, again, this is just like the odor issue specifically called out for cannabis businesses. Again, this begs for a plan to demonstrate the veracity of what's being represented. Not that the applicant is lying, but that's the purpose of plan review. The board is given a plan so it can know with certainty how the goal is to be accomplished. The section 490-56.2K says that an applicant for a cannabis business is to provide a written report. Did not see a written report that had all of the required ingredients in it.
I'm sorry, that was a report for what?
For a report on how the overall operation is to take place.
Thank you.
Bear with me 1 second. I'm accurate on that representation for you. I will read that section. A 490-56.2 subparagraph K. The applicant shall submit a written report setting forth the full particulars of the proposed use, including hours of operation, anticipated customer volume, parking facilities necessary to service such customer volume, and measures to be taken to avoid nuisance effects upon adjacent and nearby residential areas. Again, it's to me obvious why the governing body would want such a report, so that there can be little doubt about the use being able to perform without interfering with peaceful enjoyment of neighboring property. So I did not see a report that encompassed those items. Yes, there may have been testimony here and there about some of those items, but not a written report per se. I'll move on. Back to the guidelines in section 119 of the code. This is subsection B, guidelines for evaluating conditional uses. This is in the interest of protecting the public health, safety, and welfare. The board is guided to reasonable consideration of the following. Okay. It's actually item B1, so it's the number system in the ordinance. Item 1, the compatibility of the proposed use within the existing neighborhood. As I looked at this and what I knew about the application and the setting, I think that this is hardly incompatible. There's a primary school bus stop right there, as well as an ice cream establishment that is attractive to children right there. There are also children in the homes directly across. So to me, this does not speak to or in any way address that particular concern in the ordinance. Item 2, the potential effect of the use on property values. It was said by the operations witness that it will boost property value due to the higher rent for a cannabis establishment. This net opinion by this witness, I say it's a net opinion because there was no evidence provided in support of this opinion. This witness further was not qualified to render opinions as to real estate values anywhere, nor was there any attempt to speak directly to the land uses in the immediate neighborhood surrounding the subject property. Item 3, the adequacy of the proposed parking and traffic circulation for the proposed use and the potential for traffic congestion and or the creation of undue traffic hazards. For Mr. Klein's testimony, the parking falls pretty short of the reasonable. Congestion is not adequately addressed. The inability of vehicles to get out of the parking lot will cause on-site congestion. Again, Mr. Klein's testimony I'm reflecting on, which contradicts the quick in and quick out operation described by the operations witness, which was also in support of the number of parking spaces in the law. Item 4, the need for the use to serve the area. There was testimony earlier about other approved stores within a retail cannabis dispensaries, within a short distance. This clearly demonstrates no particular need, but actually it does the opposite, in my opinion. It demonstrates a lot of the same type of stigmatized land use. Why do I call it a stigmatized land use? During the period when recreational cannabis was made legal in the state of New Jersey, municipalities had an opportunity to opt in or opt out of issuing licenses for cannabis businesses. Red Bank obviously. However, the surrounding communities all around Red Bank opted to not participate in any form of cannabis business activity. So that says that, and that's not just a local story. 34%, only 34% of the state's municipalities elected to opt in to cannabis activities in their communities.
Mr. Paslano, if I could just ask you to pause for just a moment. Our other application has asked to be carried. So if I can interrupt you for a minute, make a motion to carry 26 West Front Street to the August 14th meeting with no further notice to the public. If someone would please second that motion. Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstained from the motion? So ladies and gentlemen, as a reminder always, this application 26 West Front Street Block 8 Lot 15 is being carried to the August 14th meeting with no further notice to the public. This is your notice. If you are interested in 26 West, please come back August 14th. Mr. Brodsky?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to confirm, I was talking to, Sean about it. On the 14th, my understanding is where we'd be first.
Yes,
In fact, we're the only thing on the agenda.
Yes,
this time, yes.
yes.
And Rick, just for the record, why don't you, on behalf of your client, consent to extend the time frame within which the board has to act?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ron Gazarovski, I represent Church. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gazarovski. Mr. Paslano, you're welcome to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your courtesy in this matter. Skip down to item 8 in the list of things that conditional uses need to address. And the 8 says compliance with the standards, principles, and objectives of the master plan. Long story short, an additional marijuana store, I think would be very detrimental to the planning vision for the diverse and vibrant, appealing gateway. This site area is encompassed in a small area gateway plan of the 2023 master plan, the Route 35 Gateway Small Area Plan, it's called. And that master plan segment speaks to appointment for vitality, traffic conditions, foreign traffic conditions, pedestrian safety issues, et cetera, et cetera. I think the last thing that this particular area saddled with those issues, particularly in properties, not very attractive things and makes as well. The last thing this area needs is a concentration of marijuana stores. It's not just because too many may be detrimental, but it sends, I think it sends a very definite signal to the customer base that the rest of the non-cannabis businesses in the Red Bank business areas rely on traffic from outside the area and from within the community, of course. But to the extent that they rely on visitors to come and patronize their businesses, to have right at the gateway, right at the entrance, this massive announcement, this is the place for marijuana. We've got lots of stores for you, come on in, is a misstep in the planning realm. And I think that if you find that there are other reasons this application is not worthy of approval, that is another one to add to the list. It's not supportive of what the master plan seeks to do in terms of its planning vision, excuse me, for a vibrant and appealing gateway area. There are other aspects of the master plan that matter here. The 2022 workshop in advance of the adoption of the master plan, of the 8 key issues that were identified by participants: revitalization, addressing traffic safety and congestion, economic vitality, and parking supply were high on the minds of people who took their time to input to the master plan process. So this application does not advance any of them very satisfactorily. In fact, it puts a dent in the interests of those particular issues. It keeps them from being accomplished rather than advances them. In my own professional. 9 is the item of the conditional use considerations for the evaluation process. It calls for compliance with the design standards, general provisions, submission requirements, and other appropriate provisions of this chapter. As I enumerated earlier in the testimony, the two variances and a variety of design waivers are in the mix for this particular application. Therefore, it cannot be found to be in compliance with design standards, general provisions of this and other appropriate provisions of this chapter. To move to the next part of my testimony, cut back on some of the issues that I've already entered into my comments. But let me just go through them. I'll try to be concise and site traffic per other testimony before me has not been demonstrated to be safe or to minimize congestion. The location very near one open cannabis store and 3 other conditionally approved facilities creates an enhanced cluster of what I call stigmatized venues. Since only one location is open for business, it is still unknown what the ultimate impact of such concentration will be. The concentration of stigmatized land uses creates a precondition of what is historically and powerfully demonstrated by the deliberate concentration of poor residents within subsidized housing projects throughout the U.S. Many were demolished and replaced with a lesser concentration of such uses due to the rampant crime and poor public safety that manifested in the original concentrated developments. This clustering effect is aggravated by the prohibition of cannabis retail facilities in Middletown and Holmdel, Ainslie, and Aberdeen, Kingsbury, Atlantic Highlands, Fairhaven, Rumson, Tinton Falls, Little Silver, Shrewsbury Borough. None of those communities allow cannabis retail facilities, thus making this particular location of the borough a hotspot potentially for that activity. According to Mr. Klein's testimony, the proposed use of 54 North Bridge Avenue is woefully deficient as to the parking supply, setting the stage for congestion both on-site and off-site, as well as safety concerns. The competition for too few spaces adds to the stress and potentially abrupt reactive behavior of site visitors and drivers in the ambient traffic surrounding the site. My client, Ms. Costantino, very vividly painted a picture of what she endures and her employees endure and the residents endure in this particular site area on a daily basis. Such aggravation, in my opinion, lowers the quality of life for area property and business owners and residents, visitors as well. Such congestion discourages the establishment and upkeep of other businesses. The conditional use review guidelines specify that traffic management must be adequately addressed. To my knowledge, there has been no demonstration by the applicant that traffic in an already congested area will not be made more congested or more unsafe. The evaluation of the effect on property values requires, in my opinion, an analysis of the specific site area, not references to out-of-state studies that have no bearing on local market conditions surrounding subject property. The applicant has presented documentation, and as Mr. Maynard pointed out through the board's prompting, but they should be reported very little, if any weight, in the board's evaluation because they're not specific to the properties that are adjacent to the subject site, which will be the ones that may be most impacted if this use is allowed to open here. The applicant has made no study of the impact of the concentration of cannabis facilities in a small area, or even how its own singular store will affect property values. To be meaningful in the context of the conditional use application, such evaluation should analyze how this stigmatized land use will impact values of specific nearby properties and how it may impact the viability of existing non-cannabis businesses by virtue of the cannabis stigma reflecting business vitality away from existing and prospective rural businesses. As to odor mitigation, I mentioned that no plan has been presented that shows how that will be accomplished. I won't spend any further time on that unless you want me to. The applicant has made no evaluation of how the proximity to children of the cannabis business has been addressed, other than to assert that the store is not within 1,000 feet of a school or park. As I read the ordinance, the intent of this legislative buffer is to safeguard children from potential exposure to activities involving cannabis. The site for the retail cannabis store abuts a public street segment that contains a school bus stop for small children. The adjacent lot to the north contains an ice cream treat retail store, a use highly attractive to children and families. The homes along Rankin Place in the vicinity of the proposed cannabis store are properties that include children. The law practiced in the immediate south, my client's law practice specifically, is a family law practice which may host visits by families with children from time to time. These conditions and prevailing in the area strongly indicate that the site is not compatible with the setting for the proposed use and does not represent a suitable property for this conditional use to touch down on. Almost done. This proposal is effectively for a use within a regional, for a use with a regional demand on a site designed for local commerce, not meeting the basic development standards and located where access is severely constrained and inappropriate for handling the safety and circulation distance of a regional type land use. To accommodate this use here would at best be, in my opinion, poor planning. Given the failure of the proposed use to meet the various requirements, the site, in my opinion, is not suitable for hosting the proposed conditional use, and I say respectfully, approval is not warranted. Thank you for your courtesy.
Thank you.
Please, board members or yourself have any questions for Mr.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Maynard?
Thank you. Help you refer to a document with testimony. Can I see it, please?
Those are my testimony notes.
May I see it, please?
No. Do I need to look at your testimony notes, Mr. Minority?
Did you provide a copy of that to the council before this meeting?
I did not.
Provide a copy to your client?
I did not.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm not going to ask any questions. Mr. Kennedy, there were certain issues that you indicated.
Yeah, could I just,
Testimony.
if I may, Mr. Chairman, did we want to, and I certainly defer to you, did you want to ask public questions of?
Yeah, we can do that first. Does anyone from the public have any questions for Mr. Pesolano regarding his testimony? None?
Okay. So, Mr. Minority, I think the first question would be on notice.
Yes, this issue was addressed at the last meeting. The application at the time it was filed did not reflect the change in open space that resulted from comments from the borough engineer that resulted in site changes that did cause that number to change in a more favorable way, increasing to some 1 point something percent to 4 point something percent. I don't have the numbers in front of me. And the board ruled at that time that the catch-all provision in the notice that other variances deemed necessary in support of the application would also be considered by the board. was sufficient to put the public on notice of those issues. As to design waivers, there's no requirement to notify public of design waivers, so those don't go to notice at all.
Okay. And if I could just, Mr. Chairman, just a few things on that issue. So first up, just for for record keeping purposes, let me ask, well, first off, we start with the premise that we hate notice issues because notice is jurisdictional, meaning if notice is not correct, we as a board don't even have jurisdiction to proceed. And of course, we are a very open and very transparent borough and board, so we want everything to be done in the public. So Mr. Minardi, just for the record, so that I have it on record, you heard the concerns about the notice. Didn't come through Mr. Convery, came through the planner, but just for the record, whether you think he's right or you think he's wrong, is there any feeling of your thought that you want to start all over again?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we start with the premise that, yes?
Sorry, I just wanted to have you recall that at the beginning of the May meeting, I did state that objection on the record, and you marked the record accordingly that the objection was noted.
Yes, and I believe also that was with regard to the open space.
Yeah.
And I think that's when, I think Mr. Minardi even said, if you want us to not do it and just leave it, it's worse. It's gonna be worse now if you want us to leave that. I think that was one of his comments.
I believe that's accurate.
So anyway, so the reason I asked Mr. Minardi if he wanted to do it over again is just for one of the comments is because we have this crazy little part of our law that says if an application, and you remember when Mr. Rick Brodsky just left, before he left, I said, hey, are you gonna consent to extend the time frame? And the reason that's important is because New Jersey law only gives a board a certain amount of time frame to review an application. And if the application is not adjudicated in that time frame or any agreed upon extension, there is a possibility that the applicant can receive an automatic approval. And an automatic approval is absolutely positively the worst thing that any of us could imagine. So so that's a little bit of an issue because I asked Mr. Minardi, hey, do you want to start over? And he said no. And so if that could come back to backfire on us and if we're overturned. So that's number one issue. Number two, the purpose of the notice statute, New Jersey law, is to put the world on notice as to what's going on. So when people get the notice, they're going to look at it and say, I love this idea, or they're going to look at it and say, I hate this idea, or they're going to say, I don't even care. Why do these people send me notice? So, and the law doesn't care what the reaction is. It just makes sure that the appropriate people are noticed. And the New Jersey statute requires the notice to be sent to the local paper and to the property owners or individuals or corporations who own property within 200 feet of the development site. And by law, the New Jersey law says the notice has to have the day, date, time, and place of the hearing, and it's got to have the block and lot and or the street address, and it's got to have the nature of the matter. What are you looking to do? So members of the public can look at it and sort of see, do I care about this? Should I get more information or things like that? And the fourth very important element of the notice is it has to say when and where plans are on file and available for public inspection. And again, the whole concept, Mr. Chairman, as we know, is sunshine law and transparency. So the notice was accepted at meetings, I think, Sean, even before I was even officially up here. And there was no objection. This is obviously the third hearing, third full hearing. And we've had 4 to 5 witnesses. We've had a number of public comments. And respectfully, it's again, a bit of a late argument. I appreciate the concept. And also, New Jersey case law does suggest that you notice for as many variances as you can and should. But there is law that says you got to view that in the totality of the circumstances. And I also do believe the applicant's notice did provide the catch-all phrase and any all the variances which are necessary or which may become necessary during the public hearing process. So why, there's a school of thought that says, hey, this was fine. And why would we think it's fine? Well, Mr. Chairman, the purpose is to get the people advised as to what the situation is. And I'm very glad and very happy to say that there's a lot of people here. There's a lot of people at the first meeting, the second meeting, and the third meeting. And this is technically the fourth meeting, but I think at the first meeting, there really wasn't any substantive comments. And I'm very glad that Mrs. Cosentino was here for all the meetings. I'm very glad that there are a lot of members of the public. I'm very glad that Mrs. Cosentino retained an awesome attorney like Mr. Convery to be here, as well as a traffic engineer and an equally qualified planner. So I am glad that there's so many people here. I do think the notice is sufficient under the circumstances, and I think it's important to recognize that the nature and extent of the notice didn't compromise or didn't prejudice the ability of anyone to know what's going on. And we've had newspapers and we've had agenda items on the website. And the notice that was provided did not compromise the ability of anyone to watch the hearings or participate in the hearings. It didn't compromise the ability to anyone here to advocate for the project or object against the project. So respectfully, I note the objection again, but I would, in my humble opinion, would think in the totality of the circumstances and knowing also with the potential for automatic approval hanging out in the back of my mind, I would respectfully note the objection, but find the notice acceptable.
I agree, and as we talked about last time or the time before, I find it hard to believe that the design waiver or the items being discussed would have caused anyone that's not here to show up. I think the change of use, the type of use in a notice, which is clear, is plenty to get anyone who would have a problem with this application out or on Zoom. So I'm okay with the notice as it is.
Now, I'm sorry. Mike, are you resting?
Yeah, we're finished.
Okay. And Mr. Minardi, any comments on your part?
I have a planner to call, please, to rebut the testimony of the objective planner. Mr. Peter Steck.
If I could say with respect to Mr. Steck's testimony, and I know Mr. Steck very well, I just would like with the chair and Mr. Kennedy to make sure that the testimony that he gives is in direct response to the testimony by Mr. Pessolano, because as you know, the applicant did not provide any plan testimony related to the substance of the application. So what I would just ask you to be mindful of the fact that if he is being offered to rebut the testimony of Mr. Pessolano, that any comments by Mr. Steck are directly related to the subject.
I agree, let's stick to tonight. And tonight ends in 20 minutes.
Not bad. Mr. Steck is not available for the next scheduled board meeting. No.
Let's are pushed out.
We do have a meeting in 2 weeks. I know we have one. Sean is shaking her head no. So you can just put your phone away.
Okay.
If this is gonna continue, if there's a full application for site plan approval on the 24th. That's 72 Bridge. That's a big application.
You want to get 20 minutes in now? It's up to you.
All right.
We've got a spotlight going on and off, and it's for dramatic effect. So that's Mr. Steck. Good evening and welcome to the Red Bank Planning Board. If you could just state your name and business address.
Yes, Peter Steck, STECK, 80 Maplewood Avenue, Maplewood, New Jersey.
And if you could just raise your right hand, do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide will be the truth to the best of your knowledge to help you God?
I do.
And for the record, you are testifying tonight in your capacity as a licensed professional planner?
Yes,
And certifications and everything are up to date?
my license is up to date.
Okay. And Mr. Minardi will retain your or explain your qualifications in a moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Steck, do you plan to testify before this board earlier?
You know, I just speak into the mic, I'm sorry.
Testify before this board?
Yes.
At an earlier time. In the interest of expediting this, I have his qualifications, his written qualifications, I've offered this into evidence.
Mr. Convery, I think I'm gonna ask you a leading question based upon what you said earlier. Do you have any qualification issues, the issues with the qualifications of Mr. Steck?
Comical?
No, leave that to me if necessary.
Not at all.
Okay, thank you.
We're fine accepting you as a professional planner.
I'm sorry?
831, that's exhibit I offered. Qualifications.
Oh, you're A31? Is that what we're up to? What's the next one? A31, yes.
Thank you.
And what is A31?
This is professional qualifications of Mr. Stack as a licensed professional planner.
Thank you.
So I don't have a copy of you. Mr. Convery.
Thank you.
Well,
Oh, hold on, it should be A30? I think, okay, we're gonna change that A30. Yes.
hey, would you give the board, would you tell the board, please, what you've done to prepare for this meeting in terms of viewing property and studying materials?
Yes, I toured the property, last week. I, there for, and the neighborhood in about an hour. I also examined the, Monteverde, establishment, which is within about 100 feet. I viewed the videos of the last hearings. And I reviewed zoning ordinance master plan and the application. And I was here earlier this evening to hear the testimony that was presented so far by the applicant and witnesses.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, why don't you just give the board the conclusions you reached based on your observations and research.
As the board and their governing body has made this use additional use. And the conditions are really have nothing to do with the location other than it's in the right zone. There are towns that say a cannabis retail establishment has to be 1,000 feet from another one, 1,000. But there's no separation distance here. The conditions that are listed in the ordinance, I would call them largely operational conditions. Are you going to comply with the security plan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And I believe that there is evidence on the record and presented this evening in terms of there are no comments from the police department on the security plan that all the conditions are met. Consequently, it has the status of a permitted use. And as a permitted use in the zone, you certainly have the power to manipulate things in terms of the design, parking, traffic, and the like, but you can't deny it based on the volume of traffic because it essentially has the status, in my opinion, of a permitted use. There are existing conditions that are non-conforming. This building has been here since, I think, the 1960s, looking at aerial photographs. In my opinion, you don't have to demonstrate that it's there and it has certain nonconformities. It's open, notorious, it's been there. Yes, it has a substandard side yard, but clearly this is not a building that snuck in the middle of the night. It's something that's apparent that's there. The board has already ruled on the notice issue, and that's, telling the public what's going on. The issue of the existing non-conforming conditions, some municipalities don't consider them variances because it's a pre-existing condition, such as the setback of less than a foot on the side yard. I would suggest that the non-conformities in terms of parking in the front yards, 2 front yards, the substandard amount of greenery, substandard side yard. Number one, their existing conditions have been there for a long time. Number two, one could argue that there are practical difficulties. These are existing conditions have been established for a long time. It is unreasonable to have to tear down the back 10 feet of the building to comply with the setback requirement. We are manipulating the parking arrangement, but in my judgment, it's all to the better. We are eliminating some spaces that are too close to the street. We're regularizing the arrangement. We're going to have a one-way direction in the lot. All of these things, in my opinion, are positive directions. So one could argue on the nonconformities is that there is a hardship, practical difficulties because there are existing conditions. But number two, one could argue that the public benefits substantially outweigh the detriments. What are the public benefits? Getting a new productive use into this property that is essentially a permitted use. There have been problems in the past with exiting vents in the rear of the building. Those are going to be eliminated. There is a new parking arrangement, a slight increase in green area. All of these are, in my opinion, public benefits that advance the purposes of the municipal land use law, and substantially outweigh the detriments. Your ordinance could have said, I don't want it within 500 feet of a house. Could have said, I don't want one within 500 feet of another cannabis establishment. The governing body made choices, and the applicant is entitled to rely on those choices. To say that this is a disfavored use, maybe Mr. Pesolano's personal opinion, but it's not the law. This has the status of a use that, as long as you put those protections in its operation, in my opinion, because we've demonstrated that, it has the status of a permitted use. There was testimony about Mr. Klein about number of parking spaces. Not only traffic engineers talk about parking spaces, but planners talk about parking spaces. They draft ordinances, they observe things. As an example, one of the things I did was observe the Monteverde operation that is across the street. I think the building is like 120 feet away from the subject building. That building is about 2,000 square feet. It has 5 parking spaces in the rear. One of them is a handicap space. I sat outside for about 45 minutes. Some of the customers were there inside the building for only 3 minutes. And a total of parking at, let's say, 4 minutes at the curb. There are no employees that park in there. As you know, there was off-site parking. But as I observed it, more people parked on the street than in the lot. And that's just the nature of it. It's people drive by. It's a short turnaround. And again, there were times when the facility was in operation where there was no one in the parking lot. All the customers that went in were doing curbside parking. The last thing I want to talk about is the statistical analysis of the parking demand. There was a 5th edition of ITE that talked about parking. That's been superseded by the 6th edition, which added more data. But it was, I have an exhibit where I reproduce.
Excuse me, Mr. Mancuso, I have to object to my friend Peter. This is not in direct.
Just speak into the microphone.
There is no mic.
With all respect to Mr. Steck, this is not in direct opposition to Mr. Pesolano's testimony or to Mr. Klein's for that matter. So I would just ask again to have the witness respond to the testimony.
Didn't Mr. Klein talk about this exact subject?
Mr. Mancuso, respectfully, Mr. Steck is testifying about a count that he did at the location.
And isn't what he's talking about in response to Mr. Klein's testimony? That's the way I see it.
I would think that anything that Mr. Steck says might be in some way, you could make an argument that it's related to some of the testimony. He is giving direct testimony. Their direct case ended. Our direct case started tonight. And I asked the board to make sure that his testimony was directly related to the specifics of the testimony. So
I certainly won't make an argument. I'll leave that for Mr. Minardi or an opinion from Mr. Kennedy. As a layperson, it sounds to me like he's refuting Mr. Klein's testimony.
when he says he did counts, Mr. Chairman, I don't believe that that testimony is something that should be.
I didn't, the testimony that I'm going to present comments on the statistical study of ITE.
Mr. Pesolano.
Mr. Klein brought up tonight in the new version 6. Did he not?
The fact that Mr. Klein brought up the ITE manual may be the case. If he's going to offer any testimony to refute what Mr. Klein said about the ITE manual, then I believe it's permissible testimony. If he's going to testify to the ITA manual and not have it directly related to what Mr. Klein said and object to it, then I don't think it's permissible testimony.
I wrote down what he said. He said, as Lana said, there's a woeful deficiency as to parking supply. Those were his words, a woeful deficiency.
I realize you might feel like we're walking a close line here. I don't think it's that close, and I'm okay with the testimony so far.
I respect the chair.
But we'll note your objection for the record.
I have a handout that might be helpful.
All right, now, what are we up to?
Oh, excuse me, I'm getting it all.
So this is A31, and what is A31?
A31 is the reproduction of a data chart from the 6th edition of the ITE manual, where I've altered it by removing the linear regression lines, but
Mr. Convery, did you get the copy of this?
I did it again. I levy the same objection. If Mr. Steck prepared this in advance of hearing the testimony tonight, then you can walk and correct that with an exhibit to boot.
All right, so Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that we proceed, but very short leash.
I agree with what you're saying. He obviously wasn't banging this out on his laptop while your expert was testifying. So let's.
All due respect, it wasn't very difficult to see what was coming. View the history.
so this is the data, the latest data on a marijuana or cannabis dispensary. And there are 11 data points. And what I did is I reproduced the graph, but I took away the trend lines, the linear regression analysis. And I did that because it was, in my opinion, biased by the two outliers. There is a dispensary that's 8,000 square feet and one that is 9,000 square feet, a world different from the subject one, which is 2,224. I scaled, I determined what the original data is simply by scaling from the graph. And I labeled the X's, the data points, A through K, and I reproduced them on the bottom of the table. And what I would suggest is, for a reliability point of view, ignore the two outliers. The data that's A through I is almost horizontal, which means if there's a horizontal line, there's no statistical relationship. There's no linear regression that you can predict things with. But I listed the gross floor area as I determined from the chart, as you can see at the bottom, and the number of spaces. And what I want to say is that the issue of the 85th percentile really doesn't make any sense. The data for Saturday in this study had 2 points of data. That's not a trend when you have only 2 points of data. What I want to say is that the data is not very accurate in predicting the parking demand, but as you can see from the specific listing, look at items E and F. E was an establishment of 1,480 square feet. the peak parking demand was 14 spaces. F had 2,000 square feet, that was 12 parking spaces. A larger one, 2,800 square feet, the peak parking demand was only 10 parking spaces. So what I'm suggesting is, from a statistical analysis, to force a linear regression analysis really biases the data. The 11 spaces that we're proposing appear to be comfortably within the peak parking demand, and that doesn't necessarily take into account that there is on-street parking on both streets. That's it.
Great. Do you have anything to add to that? I know we talked about this 85 percentile quite a few times.
Yeah, we did, and if I could find that, we did talk about this a few times in our review letter. To my mint and reason why I'm still awake, but our review letter, from what I recall, still maintained that what Mr. Klein said is how we interpret the ITE with 26 spaces of the 85%. Without manipulating graphs, without getting credit for, forget 20% from the last witness last time.
So Mr. Steck, just so I'm clear, you think 11 parking spaces is enough?
I think in this situation it is. If you average.
Not that I'm surprised that you think that. Because never in all my years have I had an expert, go against their client, ever.
But there are 9 facilities that range from 720 square feet to 3,400 square feet. The average is about 12 spaces. So what I'm saying is that while it's mathematically correct to calculate an 85th percentile, it is biased because you have these outliers that twist the line up, the linear regression line up, in a way that doesn't affect reality, especially with facilities this size. So I'm saying, read the data carefully, because I think there is a bias in the way it's collected and structured.
Okay, do you have anything else for us?
The only other issue, there's a, comment about the proximity to other businesses. The answer is the governing body could have made standards, it didn't. We happen not to be adjacent to any residential use. If you force all these standards in place, the ice cream place would disappear, right? You could never do that. But the answer is these are viable businesses in a downtown setting. People do walk from curbside parking. And so I think from a practical point of view, and the fact that there's a solid wall in back of this building adjacent to 2 other businesses is a benefit, because it is a buffer of the subject land use.
Mr. Convery, do you have any questions?
No, I'm just gonna.
Just use the mic, please.
I just want to renew the objections previously, which I know are on the record, but also in continuance of that objection, I would suggest that Mr. Steck qualified as a planning.
The mic's not picking me up, I'm sorry.
Mr. Steck qualified as a planning expert. The applicant does have a traffic expert who's not here this evening. So I would just object to his testimony on the grounds that there was no foundation for him as an expert in traffic. But I would also like to call Mr. Klein to rebut certain portions of Mr. Steck's testimony, if I could, Mr. Chair.
I love this. He's banging out the math right now.
I've been working on a calculator.
While he's doing that, Mr. Steck, I just have a quick question. You testified that you, based on this night, I love statistics, so thank you. But you testified that you would estimate about a dozen spaces is.
It was 11.5 on the average. And again, there's a, the R squared is 0.67, which means that the variable of square footage only explains about 2/3 of the parking demand. And we're all here talking about just square footage. So what I'm saying is there's a plus or minus. The fact that Monteverde is right across the street suggests that some of people that would have come to our facility is going to go to their facility. And again, if you look at the facts plus the on-street parking, I think that the data suggests that the parking supply of 11 spaces is comfortable and adequate.
I guess my question is just that, say, whether it's 11 or 12 that you're saying is adequate, isn't the true capacity for the application more like 7? It's the 11 minus 4 employees.
This data does not distinguish between employees and customers. They're all lumped together.
Okay, thank you.
Again, Mr. Mancuso, I'd like to just state the objection that I believe that the testimony in the area of traffic from Mr. Steck is medically. I don't believe that it's foundationally qualified to testify to the traffic. I just would like to note the objection.
It's noted.
Okay, well, Mr. Lee, line to speak to the traffic.
Good evening, Lee Klein again.
And just for the record, you recognize you're still under oath.
Still under oath, sir, thank you. So I did the math very quickly and did the spaces, the square footage for each of these. So 720 square feet divided by 15 spaces is 48. I did that down the line just for the first 9, if you're at the 2 outliers. Then I averaged them together, and it's an average of 1 space for every 160 square feet. Apply that to this site, it's still 14 parking spaces that are required on average.
Okay.
And again, based on the geometry, the layout, the distance of parking spaces from the driveway, it's an unsafe situation.
One question, Mr. Klein, did you recall in your review of the testimony or in your presence in May, if the applicant offered any testimony related to on-street parking?
Not that I can recall whether there was any available parking or what the restrictions are, the availability on the bridge, director. I don't recall that. That's
Anything else for you tonight, Mr. Minority?
Oh, Mr. Chair.
Our next available meeting is September 11th.
Any possibility we can sum up and vote on this tonight?
You know, I forgot to say, and I apologize for interrupting. Mr. Clark. I do want to put Mr. Castellano back on to testify to the planning testimony of Mr. Steck. Because Mr. Castellano has been taking impressively notes here based upon the testimony that was provided.
I see
So I
that.
don't know where we stand on the timing issue, but I do believe that I want to call Mr. Castellano to testify.
I don't think we're ready tonight. So our next available spot is September 11th. Is that okay for you all?
This is the application that will elaborate. Okay.
DNA.
You're just.
Mr. Minority?
That'll be fine. Thank you. Thank you. Chair. We'll consent to an extension of time.
Thank you.
Make a motion that this application will be carried to the meeting of September 11th with no further notice from the public. Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions or no votes?
And just one quick thing for the record, Mike and Mr. Minority, just for planning purposes, you're gonna bring your planner back. You'll have the ability, Mr. Minority, to cross-examine him. And then I'm assuming we have comments for the public and then a summation.
My only intention at the next meeting is to quote Mr. Castellano.
Okay, Mr. Minority, your intent?
The only question I have, and I can discuss with my client, is whether Mr. Steck should return to answer whether it is that Mr. Castellano comes up with.
Makes sense.
Okay, and then, Mr. Chairman, I think we have public comments, maybe summations, and then board deliberation. So that should really narrow the focus of the next meeting, I think.
Agreed.
Public that are not able to be here, so therefore they wanted to get a comment.
If they'd like to give a comment, we're happy to hear it. Providing they can't come next time.
Can you state your name and address, please? Okay, and just spell your last name again? PUD. Thank you.
I'll be as brief as possible.
That's good, because we were supposed to end the meeting 5 minutes ago.
General comments. This is in a neighborhood where many young children live. This is immediately adjacent to the school bus stop on Bridge in Monteverde, and then nearby 1-3 houses down right there. This is immediately adjacent to an ice cream shop frequented by very young children, underage children, and their families. As I mentioned last time, no one is going to do anything about drugs being consumed on premises, especially in my vehicle or the ice cream shop or the neighborhood, regardless of what the applicants have claimed. On May 8th, the applicants claimed, in response to my question, that if someone was smoking pot in a car in their lot, that the security guard was going to leave their post in the building and come out and tell their customers, one of their customers, to leave their property. That's not going to happen. The year is 2024, and many people no longer give a crap about silly behavior because they're following the law. Also, if you're a pothead and a perfect evening for you might buy some drugs at this establishment, along with some ice cream at the ice cream shop next door, along with the underage kids and their families. Do you think that the underage kids that staff the ice cream shop and work at the minimum wage and tips are going to risk their safety by asking the drug user to leave the premises? Would you like to get an ice cream with your family and kids with a stench of pot hanging in the air? That's what it is, it's pot. Let's not be naive. This is a request to operate an establishment that sells drugs. Let's call it what it is and not use the ridiculous title of a dispensary, which the dictionary defines as place where medical aid is given. People come to these places to get high and not to seek medical aid. If you're naive enough to think that most people come to these places for medical aid, then these pot shops would be better suited in a restricted area around Liberty Hospital. You get comprehensive medical attention. Let's stop pretending that the only drug that some people claim is the only one that can possibly help them just happens to give them stoned as well. Other incidents. Let's not be naive. Marijuana usage can cause several medical disorders. You can review these orders on the CDC site and many other reputable sites. Why is the town of Red Bank okay with people purchasing and receiving drugs that expose people to these medical? Let's not be naive. From the CDC, quotes, secondhand marijuana smoke also contains THC, the compound responsible for marijuana's psychoactive effects or the high. THC can be passed on to infants and children through secondhand smoke. The people exposed to secondhand marijuana smoke can experience psychoactive effects, such as feeling high. Why is the town of Red Bank okay with why is the town of Red Bank okay with people, including children and infants, being exposed to secondhand effects of any drug? Again, would you like to take your kids to the ice cream shop to get high from secondhand marijuana smoke? Let's not be naive. People that consume marijuana are more likely to be involved in drugs. Marijuana shops are convenient places to meet, purchase illegal drugs from like-minded individuals. The legal drugs bring with them increased crime and gang activity. Why is the town of Red Bank okay with the potential for increased crime and gang activity in this town? I believe that Red Bank, which most people know is a place to come and visit and maybe have a nice dinner with friends and family, will simply become Red Bank. Someone else mentioned a place to come and score some drugs, legal or illegal. The applicant and the others, this applicant and the other applicants for the other shops talk endlessly about safety, cameras and lights and locks and guards. Why? Do we have the same discussion for other businesses? No, not really. The reason that we do this is because it's an inherently dangerous and dirty business. Let's not be naive. Finally, when most towns have wisely rejected the sale of drugs, the town of Red Bank seems to be awfully enthusiastic about what it raises, which raises the obvious questions. Why? And what is behind all of this? What is the relationship of any of the members of the board or the town council with any of the applicants, either personal, business, or political?
something for all of us to think about.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that won't be here on September 11th that would like to comment? Sir, come on up. Yes, and name and address, please.
My name is Hugh Giordano, Blackwood, New Jersey.
And you were not previously sworn, were you? Okay, do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide, to the extent you provide any, will be the truth, the best of your knowledge, to help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Chair and Board, my name is Hugh Giordano. I am a union representative for the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, UFCW. We are also part of the AFL-CIO and the official union that represents cannabis workers from seed to sale, both medical and adult use. I would also like to put on record that I am a state sanctioned medical patient as well. I'm here to testify to say that these businesses will create an economic for Red Bank, as we have seen with other facilities that have opened. We represent in New Jersey all the MSOs, and we are also organizing the independent shops, both retail, cultivation, manufacturing, delivery, and so forth. One of the things that's important to recognize about this applicant is that they signed 2 labor agreements. One is a project labor agreement, a PLA. This will make sure that the building is done, retrofitted, and built using trades labor. That is sheet metal workers, IBEW. That means that all the issues that we have heard earlier will be out the door. Union trades are the best in the state, and we are proud to be here to make sure that this building is done using union building. Also, they signed what's called a labor peace agreement, an LPA. That means that the facility will function unionized. They will have the right to form and join a union without fear or intimidation, not a Walmart or an Amazon scenario. This comes with living wages. This employer also agreed to use the MIT scale, which means that residents here in Red Bank will have the opportunity to have a job starting at a rate around $24 an hour, plus healthcare, sick time, vacation time, and of course, the union retirement plans that we are so glad to provide to these workers. These workers also, from seed to sale, are very intelligent. So it brings a boom here. People move here. This is a career. When young people graduate from Stockton, from Rutgers, with degrees in biology, chemistry, and so forth, they come and they get these jobs as a career. They plan on being here for 25, 30 years. Hence why workers are forming unions, because they don't want to see it be a part-time job. Second of all, since there's no such thing as a professional labor representative, I've been with the UFCW for 21 years as a representative. We represent a lot of heavily regulated industries such as alcohol, healthcare, and of course cannabis. I can tell you that retail facilities are one of the most heavily guarded facilities in the state. More guarded than the bank, CVS, or Necker, or Walmart. Okay, there's state police have 24-hour access to those cameras, which means not only are the residents watched, or consumers or patients, but the workers are as well. Under state police, and the CRC also has 24-hour access to those videos as well. It kind of makes me upset on a personal level that people call that patients stoners and potheads. I am a good citizen. I have a master's degree in legal studies. I'm married. I do not think that poor people or sick people are blight to a community. I think it is important to remember that this is a working class community. And that we have to be open to that. Also, there were statements made that Tinton Falls and other places decided to opt out. That is not true. You can look at the testimony and go to Google News and type that in. Marijuana owning facility, those places have agreed, Keyport, to have cannabis in their facility in their towns, boroughs, and cities. So I think it's important to recognize that as well. This is the new industry. But to demonize people who consume, to demonize business, legal businesses in zones that are here, this is not, the zone is not for home. It's good to feel like you're at home when you're at work. As a labor representative, I surely appreciate that. It's not at home. It's a place of business. And in saying that, On behalf of the UFCW, on behalf of the building trades and the AFL-CIO of New Jersey, we are asking that you support this application, create good jobs, create economic and social justice for working class people of Red Bank. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have voted to carry this application with no further notice to the public to September 11th. If you'd like to come back, please join us then.
7:00 PM.
7:00. Motion to adjourn. Oh, no, we have other work. Yep, sorry, we have administrative stuff. There was no way I was gonna get out of here without being reminded of that. So we have meetings for May 8th and June 12th. Does anyone have any comments, revisions, or questions about those minutes that were distributed? Can we get a motion to approve May 8th?
So moved.
I'll second it. The roll call on May.
Christina Bonatakis?
Yes.
Dan Mancuso?
Yes.
Barbara Boas?
Yes.
Itza Hernandez?
Yes.
Frederick Stone?
Yes.
Brian Farnigan?
Yes. I'll move June 12th. Do we have a second?
Second.
Dan Mancuso?
Yes.
Demento?
Yes.
Barbara Boas?
Yes.
Itza Hernandez?
Yes.
Brian Farnigan?
Yes.
The last two remaining items do not require any action. I just want to let everyone know that the Sustainable Jersey Health policy and the Community Diversity and Equity profile were in your packets. If there's any questions or comments about that, you can send them to Shauna and we can pick them up next time if we need to.
Yes. That's all that's needed, is just an FYI. The information is just an FYI. There's no action that needs to be taken. It's just to help you in making any decision going forward on any applications, on knowing what the existing status is of the borough. That's it.
We're back July 24th with a big application. Motion to adjourn. Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.